Okay, today I've got something a little different planned for you guys. Today we're going to start with what the three main types of, the three types of purchasing people, the three types of purchasers, I guess, would be the best way. So, three types of purchasers. Now, we're going to fix this up later, but what is the three types of purchases? Or purchasers, sorry, not purchases. So, the first we'll start with the immediates that we know automatically. Okay, you know what? I don't need this pageless format window. Thank you. So we're going to start off by saying that there are three types of people that purchase things, and they all fit into these categories because you will either fit into the early, the mid, or late sections of what we're going to cover today. So we'll start with what we call early adopters. Okay. Now, what an early adopter is, an early adopter is somebody who buys as close to the release of a product as possible. Okay. So if that's tech, then they will buy it pretty much right away. Within the first 6 to 12 months, typically. Okay? So those are the guys that we call the Joneses. These are the Joneses. These people are your Joneses. So these are your keep up with the Joneses type. Now, what I mean by that is they usually have to be pretty up to regular per. They want to be as regularly involved in the release of things, right? So, new product comes out, they got to try it. They got to get their hands on it. It's within the first year purchase. They have to get it. If they got the money, they have it. You know what I mean? They got that hot button buyer, especially when it's a new product. So that's the thing. If it's new and it's modern and it's sleek, or if it's trendy, the early adopters will be the first people in on it. So we're going to continue on, and I'm going to elaborate more on these three types as we go further in this video. So we're going to have a little bit more to go with for you guys. So this middle section, I like to call the mainstream. Okay. Now, the mainstream are your typical everyday people. Like, they'll buy because they want that or they think they need that in their everyday lives. So they are more inclined to buy out of need rather than want. They will buy the essentials first and typically are between the 2 to 5 year purchase from release date area. Okay, so what that means is like 2 years after the concepts come out, okay, well, everybody's telling me about the PlayStation 4. Everybody's talking about it when it first came out, for example. And oh well, these people are streaming great games. They got higher graphics. Okay, well, I like playing my games. Maybe I'll consider this. It's been 2 years. It sounds like it should be able, it's going to be good. So you go for it, you buy it. That's your mainstream people, right? They're not always going to be right up in the early adopter. Sometimes they'll be close to the early adopters too, right? Because it's a matter of personal wish. But when you're promoting a product, the idea is you want those three types of people to be well understood in your own mind. You want to know what an early adopter is, because those are the people that once you get this product out, they want it. So you got to make sure you got that splash effect so that they can get it as soon as it's out. But the mainstream, they'll wait a little bit. They'll see how it goes. They'll see what the early adopters say, right? They won't always just be there to get it. If they think there might be something wrong with it, they may wait it a little bit longer, right? They're a little more cautious. But however, then there's the final type, right? The late adopter. Now, these guys, I fit into the mainstream. But the late adopter, however, will wait and wait. These people, they will wait long enough to see the product they are considering is actually to the promises of the brand. Now, here's the thing with that, okay? Typically after 5 years of the product release, depending on what it is. But like if it's a cell phone, this is going to be more like 3 to 6 months for the early adopters, and mainstream will be like 6 to 2 years for mainstream, and 2 years to 5 years will be a late adopter for mobile devices, for an example. So you got to keep in mind that this will vary a little bit, but the idea is that you understand these different mentalities of what comes forth with purchasing, right? So early adopters, they'll see a product like when the PlayStation 5 came out, right? Immediately, they sold a lot to the early adopters. And I'm going to use this for an example here. Okay, so let's do a little extra reading, and we'll go Google.ca. This is just to give you an idea of the early adopters. Okay, so PlayStation. We'll just do day one. Okay, day one sales. So, let's see. On the first day, in America, they expected to sell 1 million, right? And that's a lot. Over 90,000 people to 110 in Canada alone. Like, Canada's got 35 million people. So that is 95,000 to 110,000 people in my country that got it right as soon as release. Not everybody is the early adopter, it's a select group. But this tells you right there. Okay, so they sold 1 million systems on day one. In the mainstream, now we're still in that mainstream phase with PlayStation 5, right? So, sales to date. Because now this includes the early adopter and everybody. And it's sold over 30 million as of July of this year. So now, PlayStation 5 sold over 40 million systems in this time frame from original release. So keep in mind again, the first 6 to 12 months, so up to the first year of sales, is the early adopters, right? 1 million of those people were already day one ready to go. Here we are 3 years after the release of PlayStation 5. The mainstream is still trying to adopt into it. However, 40 million systems in this time. Now, the late adopters, right, in the next 2 years will still be mainstream. Okay? So that would be 2025. After 2025, we start to see the late adopters. And that may be even because of financial, right? There's different reasons people fit into these different categories. Sometimes the late adopter is a matter of affordability. If they wait for the price to drop, because when it's an early thing, well, you're paying through the nose. I mean, when you looked at the PlayStation 4 when it first came out, it was $400 and some odd dollars, and then the PlayStation 5 comes out, it's $500 and some odd. That's a $100 difference in a console in the matter of a few years. So these are the things we look at, right? These are the things we want to know. Is everything that we can understand. But these are the types of people for your marketing approach, okay? You need to understand these because for the early adopters, they tend to have the money, right? They tend to be able to either have the money set aside or they buy it because they can afford it right off the hop. They want to be the first in line, man. So they got to keep up with the Jonases, right? They got the Jonas brothers next door. They want to keep up with them. Just an example. Uh, with mainstream, we all, like, I'd say mainstream would be like 80% of people, okay? So, like, if I was to put numbers to it, right, we've got probably like 15% of the population in the early adopters, okay? Then we got about 80% in the mainstream. When we look into the late adopters, that's where about the last 5% would sit. And the only reason is because by the time that beta test has gone by, so to speak, that launch has gone by, then the mainstream will either adopt it or the product doesn't thrive. So if it doesn't make it past mainstream, the late adopters, well, that's 5%. Some of them may actually ignore what the mainstream says and still buy. But most of the time, if the mainstream doesn't bulk buy it or get into the bulk of it, then it's not going to be a successful product. So if they have a good early adoption rate, which as PlayStation, right, they have a 15% conversion of like their first day. So 15% of their audience is likely to be potential buying whatever releases, right? 80% of that audience is going to wait for a year, 2 years, 3 years. Then your late adopters are going to come along and they're going to piddle around. Sometimes the late adopters are just nostalgic as well. So, like, for example, the Nintendo 64 still sells. Even though they don't produce it anymore, they still sell it. It still sells. So, I mean, that's a late adoption of that technology. Very late, mind you, but this is the things that I like to use as examples. I hope you have found this informative in some way, shape, or form, and thank you for watching this, as I just make these videos to try to help everybody understand the different aspects of marketing or different aspects of sales or writing. Like, I do all kinds of different videos, guys, so I really hope you enjoyed this content. Thank you very much for checking this video out. Don't forget to like and subscribe.